Hey guys, how's it going? Back with a little update for you. Got a few new things to show. One of my earliest videos I was talking about some reggae stuff I had found in a bookstore near me that also sells vinyl. They had gotten in this kind of collection of from somebody that had worked in a record store and stashed away these crates of records, kind of from late 70s, early 80s, and they're just practically mint condition, all of them. Look like they've never even been played. And I picked up some reggae ones. So this store's now got a 25% off sale. So I went back and got a couple more that I had left behind, either because I had them already and or the price was getting a bit up there. But anyways, I grabbed this one. This is Wailing Souls Firehouse Rock. This is yet another one on Greensleeves label. I had this on reissue, but it's nice to OG up. This Wailing Souls are one of the great vocal trios that were in Jamaica in the 70s and 80s. This has got the title track, and Kingdom Rise, Kingdom Fall is one of their heaviest and deadliest tunes on here. Produced by Henry Junjo Laws, backed by Roots Radix, and mixed by scientists at King Tubby's, which is kind of a mark of quality right there all the way around. It's from 1982. And I also had Bunny Wailer Protest from 1977. Did not have this one before. It's on Mango label. And I had a few thrift finds recently. One I got was Commodores. Moving on. This is one of their earlier ones from 1975. Kind of before they went like all ballads and kind of pop. There is one slow track on here. Sweet Love is the hit. It's one of the early Lionel Richie ballads, I guess. But other than that, it's straight funk. And even Sweet Love, now that I listen, I've heard that song before, and when I listen to it in the context of this album, you can still hear the kind of funky underpinnings with the guitar and the bass, trying to keep it on the funky side. But some pretty well killer tracks all the way through. It's got Free and Gimme My Mule are two of my favorites on here. The cover's a little beat up, but other than that, it's great shape. I got Tears for Fears, The Hurting. Had songs from the Big Chair already, but did not ever have this one on vinyl. Got this for like 50 cents, and it's almost perfect condition. I don't buy too many 80s records anymore, but once in a while, something a little out of the ordinary comes along, I'll grab it. It's like, that's the 80s right there for me. Two stylish dudes dressed in black, staring at the ducks, being all depressed and thinking deep thoughts. That's the 80s for me right there. And I had this one I found. 5 Americans, Western Union, and Sounds of Love. This is some kind of garage rock in parts, little taste of psych every now and then, but the bulk of it kind of Beatles, Monkees-esque pop. It's from 1967. This group was out of Texas. It's in very, very nice shape for the age. And it's on the Abnac label. Very nice stuff on here. It's got a pretty rockin' cover of Gimme Some Lovin' by Spencer Davis Group. And I was also very shocked to find this one in the thrifts. P.F. Sloan. 12 More Times. It's on RCA. This is from mid-60s, 65, 66, I think. Kind of very Bob Dylan-esque folk rock. He was a prolific songwriter and started putting out his solo records. Got in some disputes with the Dunhill record label, which kind of scuttled his solo career, unfortunately. This one also, a few little scratches, but very, very nice shape for a thrift store find. Normally you see something like that, there's one of 3 things is going to happen. There's no record inside, which I can kind of tell by the weight right away now. The wrong record is inside, or the record is in there, and it looks like somebody's practiced their ice skating on it. But lucked out that time. And I also got Katie Lang, Shadowland, 1988. This is kind of her tribute to Patsy Cline, and working with Patsy Cline's producer. It's all country kind of standards. I don't think I've ever really listened to anything full length from her. I know a few of her songs, but amazing singer. And I've heard it said that country music and soul are like flip sides of the same coin, and this is kind of posits an argument for that theory. It's very soulful vocals on here. Great tone, great control, great phrasing, fantastic stuff. And I had a few kind of bargain cheap bin finds at a record store also a bit before that. We got BB&Q, Brooklyn, Bronx and Queens Band, On the Beat, 12-inch single, 1981. That was only like a couple of dollars. Oh, this one was actually another thrift find. The Kane Gang, The Bad and Lowdown World of. That's another 80s one. It's from 1985 on London. This is kind of a UK group, kind of pop rock, a bit synthy in places. Kind of a socio-political bent to some of their lyrics, and a soul influence as well. Actually, they kind of remind me of Style Council in that way. And as far as the soul influence, there's a cover of Respect Yourself by the Staple Singers on here. And they were apparently friends with Prefab Sprout. And speaking of Style Council, I got The Jam, A Town Called Malice. The Jam, Paul Weller's first band before the Style Council. This is a live cut from the Hammersmith Palais, 1982. This was like $1 or $2. Thought that was crazy. Had a couple of jazz ones, again in the cheap bins at a record store. Gene Ammons, Got My Own. This is on Prestige, 1973. It was like $4 or something like that. And also this one, hear about this guy a lot in the BC. I don't have anything else by him. Mccoy Tyner, Asante. This is recorded in 1970. It is on Blue Note. Very Afrocentric. It's kind of like going on a musical tour of Africa with these kind of ethereal vocals floating in and out of the songs. And lastly, for the record store finds, I got Generation X, debut from 1978, Chrysalis, first generation UK punk, and of course Billy Idol. Later went on to greater success. Very nice album, Matt, and a bit of a reggae influence on that one too. The early UK punks, of course, big fans of reggae. The Clash and Sex Pistols, members of that, always promoting reggae. A couple of weeks ago, a record dealer guy I know is down in downtown Vancouver. He puts on, once a year in the summer, he puts on kind of a sidewalk sale. Gets one of his record dealer buddies, and they just set up a few crates of records on the sidewalk on this kind of suburban street in Vancouver under these big 100-year-old trees. And it's just it's a great day to go down and hang out and flip through some records. So I got these two from his buddy. First choice, Armed and Extremely Dangerous. The title track is one of their big ones. This is from 1973. This is a Japan pressing on Bell Records. Got this for like $1.50 or something like that. The cover is a little bit messed up. Somebody, for some reason, took a plastic sleeve and like taped it into the inside of the jacket. But other than that, the vinyl is terrific shape. And I also got this one, Redbone, Wovoka. This is from 1973. I've been kind of putting together a discography of these guys. They were a Native American group. I think all 4 members were from various reservations along the west coast of the U.S. At least 1 or 2 of them were from Washington State, which is just south of me. The big tune on here is Come and Get Your Love, which if you saw the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, that song was featured very prominently in there. And it's the song that kind of got me interested in checking out these guys. I'd heard it years and years before, but very canny use of music in that film. But that was kind of a fluke top 40 hit for them, but really not typical of their sound at all. I've been checking out some of their earlier records. I'm still looking for their debut, I think, which is the main one I want to track down. But they're a mix of like tribal native rhythms and lyrical themes with rock, and particularly blues rock. They mix in a bit of R&B, a bit of funk. There's even one song on here from 1973 which has a bit of a reggae feel, which is kind of unusual for that early to be getting into the musical consciousness of the time. But a few of their albums, their mid-period later albums, don't get great reviews, but I've got about, I think, 4 now, and I like all of them. Redbone, Come and Get Your Love. And I had one more reggae find from a record store. I just happened to come across this. This is Prince Lincoln and the Royal Rasses, Vortex Dub, 8-fold. This is a 2 LP set on the Get Back label out of Italy. This came out in 2003. This has dubs to 2 of his albums from 1979 and 1980. One of them was partially produced by Joe Jackson. Prince Lincoln was a Jamaican singer, recorded a few sides at Studio One. Then he linked up with a group called the Rasses, or sometimes the Royal Rasses, which was kind of a loose coalition of singers with him as kind of the ringleader. At times the membership would be fluid, but at times Cedric Myton from the Congos would be in the group. And he was one of the guys that came out of that kind of 70s school of roots reggae artists who were kind of very much pursuing their own individualistic musical path within the context of roots reggae and their Jamaican culture and just the vibes of the times. So he, pursuing this path of his, he went to England to record for the Ballistic label. Also eventually started up an Ital food shop. And had a few albums out. Didn't kind of find any great success due to lack of promotion or what have you. And finally passed away from cancer in 1999. So these are dubs to 2nd and 3rd album, if I'm not mistaken. One of these is mixed by Prince Jammy, which means his dub mixing style tends to be fairly dry, straightforward rhythm, not a lot of echo or reverb or tweaking in the mixes. And the other one has a bit more of a looser feel, some vocal samples sliding in and out of the mix. Prince Lincoln's most famous song was called Humanity, sometimes known as Love the Way It Should Be, which still gets revived from time to time, and it was actually done a few years ago by John Legend on his album with The Roots called Wake Up. Did a very, very faithful cover version of that. And getting back to that sidewalk sale, my record dealer pal, he sometimes hooks me up with some nice reggae things. I had gotten a few things from him that I showed in another video. I was eyeing this one up back then, but it was getting a little pricier, so I held off. This time I was going down to see him, so I figured I'd pull the trigger on it this time. It is Barnabas in Collins Wood by the Lone Ranger. This is a 1979, I believe, original pressing on the Wave label, Jamaican pressing. It's a production by Alvin G.G. Ranglin. Lone Ranger was a DJ. He was kind of one of the guys that started pointing the way towards the dance hall style that would become prevalent in the early 80s. His first album was for Studio One again. It's called On the Other Side of Dub. I do not have that one yet. This, I believe, is his second album, which the guy that sold me this, I know he personally has a copy of On the Other Side of Dub in his collection. Maybe I can persuade him to part with it one of these days. This one, not a cheap one. I did not get it cheap. It goes for well into the 3 figures on Discogs. I got it for much less than that. Plus, he tossed this one in for free. This one is Slim Smith, Just a Dream. This is on the Clock Tower label, which can be kind of a controversial or problematic label. I tend to avoid the more recent reissues, which have the Abrahams logo on it and kind of a biblical looking guy on there. But originally in the 1970s it was more or less a legitimate label as far as reggae goes, which can be, there can be a lot of gray areas, let's put it that way. Slim Smith has been called one of the great, if not the greatest vocalist to come out of the rocksteady era in Jamaica. He served times with the Techniques vocal group and then the Uniques. Recorded many classics, recorded an album for Studio One again, and by the early 70s he had gone solo and was recording a couple of albums for prolific producer Bunny Stryker Lee, of which this is one. This album is one of those anomalies you get in reggae, where what's on the track list and on the label is not what's on the record at all. But it's hard to get frustrated because what's actually on the record is terrific. It's just fantastic music. I recognize a couple of songs on here. There's a cover of Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Stay, the Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs tune. Other than that, it's going to take a little bit of research to figure out the tunes that are on here. I'm going to leave you with I'll put a link in the comments down below to a tune I'd like you to check out by Slim Smith if you get a chance. It's probably his greatest tune, one of the greatest tunes in Jamaican music, period. It's called My Conversation. A great rock-steady tune. And I'll also put a link to the title track to the Barnabas Collins tune, which is on the same rhythm track as the Slim Smith song, but from about a decade later. If you listen carefully, you can tell the backing music is the same. That's what they call versioning. Slim Smith, very, very talented singer, as I've said, had a very short and tragic life. He'd gone solo by the early 70s, started getting into a very fragile and erratic state of mind. He was actually incarcerated in Bellevue Mental Hospital in Jamaica. Got out, was recording, and sometime in 1973, I think it was, there was he met kind of a very tragic demise. The stories kind of vary a little bit, but basically his behavior had been getting more and more erratic. That night he'd been out with friends. There'd been some ganja consumed, I guess, and he came home to his parents' house late at night. It was locked up. He was trying to get inside, so he punched his fist through a glass window to unlock the door and lacerated his arm very seriously and basically bled to death on the street outside his house. And he was about 25 years old and undoubtedly would have gone on to record a lot of beautiful music had he survived. So with that, I will leave you with the taste of Slim Smith, My Conversation. I might even make it a double shot with one of his other classics called The Beatitude. So that's it for today. I will have more stuff for you very soon, and peace.